Ngā mihi mai oha ki a koutou, kua hui hui mai nei, ngā mihi ki te iwi e tau nei, ki a Ngāti toa, ki a Taranaki whānui, tēnā koutou. Hoi anō, ko wai tēnei, he tangata tiriti au, I tipu ake au I Kentucky, I te whenua o Shawnee, o Chickasaw, o Yuchi, o Cherokee, no Ingarangi, no Ruhia, no Pōrana, no Tiamani o ku tūpuna. E noho ana au ki konei, ki te whanganui atara. Ko Chief Publishing Officer o Pickpock au, ko Karah Sutton tōku ingoa. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hello everyone, thank you for joining me here today. I have 2 careers. I am the Chief Publishing Officer at New Zealand game studio Pickpock, and I am also an author, published with Penguin Random House. I think book publishing and games publishing have a lot more in common than people realize, and there's a lot more that we could learn about from paying attention to both industries. In the last 5 years since my first book published, I've learned a lot about what publishers can do, what they can't do, and how authors and developers can get the most out of the publishing process. How does this work? Whew, what have I done? Is it just the green button? It's not doing it. Try it? Oh yeah, thank you. Should I boop so that you can push it forward? My journey as an author runs parallel to my time in games. During my first interview with Pickpock in 2013, when the question of hobbies came up in my interview, I sheepishly admitted, I write books. It was the first time I'd ever voiced this to anyone besides my closest friends and partner. I had not even told my own family. My first book came out in 2020 and did surprisingly well for all the bookstores in the world being closed. It was named a Goodreads Choice Award nominee and was named the best book of the season by the American Booksellers Association. Oh, so what? No. No. So that pushes me backwards, but I can't go ahead. Thank you. Oh, this screen one, I see. Okay, thank you. There we go. In games publishing, I started out in marketing, then became the communications director, and finally chief publishing officer, which was also in 2020, so it was a busy year for me. Like book publishing, games can be either self-publishing, where you publish yourself, or traditional publishing, where you work with a publisher. Pickpock does sometimes publish games by external developers, which I have overseen, but we mostly self-publish, with our total publishing capacity making up about 40 people out of a 200-plus person studio. Before we go any farther, I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page about what a publisher does. In the old days, one of the major reasons you had to have a publisher was because they also coordinated printing your games onto physical cartridges and all the sales and logistics and shipping to get your game into stores. Nowadays, it's much more about building awareness and digital sales, whether that's through marketing or advertising, which includes all the graphic design and video editing, but can also include things like localization and translation, user testing, QA, analytics, all those teams I listed at the beginning of this presentation. And there are pluses and minuses to both. Working with a publisher means you don't have the pressure of doing all the marketing yourself, but it also means that you have less control. When it comes to deciding whether to self-publish, there's clearly lots to consider. But you should go beyond whether or not you need financing to finish your game. Consider what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to invest. And ask yourself, will a publisher help me build an audience which will follow me to future projects? For a lot of people, the choice to go with a publisher comes down to financing, which is totally understandable, but if you're only considering a publisher due to financing, you might not be thinking through all your options. There might be grants available or VC funding you could pursue and still self-publish, so you really want to weigh the pros and cons. Brandon Sanderson is a fascinating example in books because he's been traditionally published for years. He built up a fan base and then went to a Kickstarter and leveraged his fan base to self-publish. He wouldn't have done that if he was 100% happy with his traditional publisher, and I expect he wanted to keep significantly more than the 12 to 25% rev share that authors get paid. Mostly 12%, 25% is digital. But at the same time, he probably wouldn't have had success in the first place were it not for his publisher. And you can see here in the success story column on the far right that it's close to 50-50. You can find massive success either with a publisher or self-publishing in games. A lot of people who prefer to have total creative control would much rather self-publish. That's why Pickpock does it. We're not splitting our revenue and we are masters of our own destiny. I was doing an interview once on a national radio program, and the very lovely interviewer admitted that she knew absolutely nothing about games. At one point, she asked me very sincerely, "And just how many games are there?" A lot of my coworkers laughed at a question so impossible to answer, but to give her the benefit of the doubt for a second, I can see why she thought maybe there was an answer. Books have been around for 1,000+ years, so we obviously can't count the total number of books to have ever existed, right? Movies, been around for 100 years, so that's also too hard. But games, we've been around for 50 years, and for the first 30, the ability to bring a game to market was highly restricted. So maybe there's an answer. By the end of 2024, there were around 200,000 games on Steam. 18,000 of those were published in 2024. In mobile, there are around 700,000 games on the App Store and Google Play as of 2023. In the US, there are ISBNs, or unique product IDs, for 50 million books, most of which are currently for sale. In the US in 2024, approximately 3 million new books were published. 2 million of those were self-published. But that's just books in print. What about books sold? In book publishing, books less than 1 year old make up 32% of yearly book sales. That means 68% of all books sold are what's known as back catalog, older books. So considering people have 50 million books to choose from, a third of the market being purchases of new books feels pretty great, right? So back to Steam, in 2024, we saw only 15% of hours spent on Steam played in games released that year. Now, I know that's an imperfect stat because that might include a game released in December, which leaves fewer hours available to play, but there are other stats, including one that was announced before I gave this talk the last time I gave it, which was that 92% of hours are spent playing games more than 2 years old. 92%. Why am I talking about all of this? About the size of markets for both books and games, which are obviously very different scales from each other. What I'm trying to show you with these pie charts is that while there aren't nearly as many games as books, in games we actually have a harder time convincing people to buy something new. You don't just have to be the hit game of the week. You have to convince players that they should take a break from the game they've been playing for years. Collected all the gizmos, leveled up all the whatevers to give your game a shot. In the past 15 years, we've gone from a games market where opportunities to explore new concepts were seemingly endless, and speaking to players was straightforward, to a world where we now have to fight for visibility. We've entered a new era. Standing out is harder than ever. Many people will have similar ideas to you. Players who love your game might not hear about your game. Who might love your game might not hear about your game. And success is difficult to predict. When a market becomes competitive or mature, whatever word you want to use, these things happen. And as both an author and a games publisher, there's something I've observed a lot with creative teams. Usually at some point, maybe halfway through a process of making a thing, you believe in it and you really think people will love it. You start to panic when you think about how to actually sell it. It's a bit like a midlife crisis, only where instead of being confronted with your own mortality and buying like a fancy car, you are starting a TikTok account and praying that dances sell your game. This is the time when a lot of people start to think about finding a publisher, but that panic, that need to find a publisher, assumes that a publisher will sell your game well. I'd like to talk a little bit more about this last point. Success is difficult to predict, because this segues into a common question across all entertainment industries. The tumultuous times we've seen in the past 2 to 3 years in the games industry has led a lot of people to give strong opinions on how to better predict success. Is it through rapid iteration, market research, targeting niches, cloning successes? We cling to data because it's comforting. And for developers, it's easy to cling to the assumption that publishers know how to make something into a hit. But do they? Because in book publishing, a major court case tried to definitively answer this question. Can a publisher turn something into a hit? This trial went on for weeks, and the closet skeletons and closed-door data that came out of it was fascinating. Evidence presented during the trial made the argument, and the judge agreed, that a publisher can spend more money on marketing to heavily improve the odds that something will have higher sales. But this comes at the expense of profit, which means they will only ever do this selectively. They reserve this marketing spend for things that they've had to invest in heavily already, so they can recoup their costs to break even. So what they do instead is they rely on profits generated from, quote, breakout hits, books they've invested little into that become huge successes. A publisher doesn't want to spend money marketing your game. They want the game to do the selling for them. How to make your game sell itself to publishers or to players. What do you see when you look at these? If you look at the top row, what kind of book are you expecting? And feel free to shout it out. Thriller? Yeah. Yeah? Intense? Mystery. Unsettling. Probably has murder or death in it. And the bottom row? Yeah. Romance? Yeah. Kissing. Stuff besides kissing. Cozy. Books have perfected marketing based on genre. They know how to communicate instantly what experience you're in for with a single image. Don't judge a book by its cover is actually a metaphor, by the way. You can absolutely judge a book by its cover because that is their function. It's so successful that they sometimes even develop an unspoken language of visual signals between publishers and readers. With those 90s style romance book covers with like Fabio with the nice hair, they actually had this whole code. It was like a blue background meant that the male romantic love interest was a cop. Or if the faces were cropped off at the head and you only saw a torso, that meant that it had more explicit content. So readers actually knew this code, and the cover created a dialogue. Readers understood what was being promised to them. So this is where I believe that marketing starts with your genre. When we released our game, Rival Stars Horse Racing, it was a straightforward, thoroughbred horse racing game. But over time, we discovered that we were tapping into an underserved market. Our horses were realistic, with motion-captured animations, and our largest audience, our most devoted players, weren't actually sports people, they were horse people. Horse-loving adults, more precisely. And they were hungry because all the general horse games on the market tended to think of horse lovers as children. So the art styles, the narratives, they were all made for kids. We started to think about genre not just as key to what we were making, but key to our relationship with the audience. We expanded from being a sports game into an animal caretaking game. Thinking really critically about our genre became key to our marketing strategy. But is genre just about gameplay? And I bet you all want to say, of course, we make games and gameplay is what matters. Is it? Let's look at my book cover for a second. And I will say that originally I didn't have my book cover in this because I was like, no, I'm here to promote pickpocket games. And it was actually my boss who was like, good grief, put your book in there. So A Wolf for a Spell is the more successful of my two books, and I genuinely believe that the cover had a lot to do with it. It's not just conveying genre, it's setting expectations about the experience and the intended audience. Grandmothers pick up this book for their grandkids because the cover tells them that it's cozy, it has strong female characters, it's a fairy tale, folkloric setting. A cover can tell you whether a book is literary or commercial, whether it's fast or slow-paced, whether it's creepy or cozy. Covers work to answer the question, what will this make me feel for the 10 hours that I spend with it? In games, the questions that you need to answer are, what will this make me do? And what will this make me feel? Will I feel powerful, strategic, accomplished, relaxed? Will the narrative tug at my heartstrings? In games, your key art is your book cover. It's your Steam capsule. It's what YouTubers use as their thumbnail, sometimes if they're not using random AI stuff, which they do, but let's set that aside. If I'm scrolling through a store and your key art is what gets me to stop and linger. It gets me to look at your product page, to find out your gameplay, to watch your videos. So think about that for a minute. Unless I'm browsing by categories, which people obviously do, but not always, if I'm just on a home page or an event page or a sale page, I'm seeing your key art before I know what your gameplay is. And I do acknowledge that a lot of people find games they want to play by watching videos or streams, but you don't want to ignore this just because that is also true. Your key art needs to do a lot of heavy lifting. Your screenshots and videos will answer the question, what will this make me do? But first, you use your key art to demonstrate what will this make me feel? And also, does this have things that I love? Because I love fantasy, but the challenge is that I love wizards and I don't care about dragons. If I see a wizard, I'm more likely to click than if I see a dragon. This is why market research focus groups and A/B testing are important, by the way. Don't assume that people like the same things about a genre that you like. Someone could like romance, but only historical and not modern day. In games, one straightforward way we can approach this is by thinking more about our setting. I can't tell you how many times I ask people what their game is, and they say, it's a city builder. Okay, sure, great, yeah, but like, why should I choose yours? I know what things I gravitate towards, stuff about pirates, stuff about cowboys, medieval castles. For my husband, it's spaceships and trains. If you tell me that your city builder is based around gold mining towns in the Old West, then suddenly my ears perk up. Sometimes genre clearly implies gameplay, like a farming sim, but not always. Game developers are great at talking about genres in terms of gameplay. We know how to tell people whether a game is simulation or farming, stealth or survival, combat or deck builder. Yet in a German study of factors influencing game purchase decisions, only 17% of respondents said gameplay genre caused them to purchase. And this is a really hard stat to find, by the way, because a lot of these surveys are like, how did you hear about this game? And it'll all be like, from friends, I saw it at the store, I saw a streamer. But it's like, why did you buy it? Like, did you buy it because it sounded fun, because it's a franchise you love, because it's made by people you care about? Like, why did you buy it? And gameplay genre was only 17% of the reasons why people said that people gave. We're good at talking about gameplay. We're less good at talking about settings. Is it in space? Is it on a pirate ship? In a graveyard? We're even less good at talking about tone. Is it thrilling, contemplative, cozy, silly? And worst at talking about tropes. Am I a lovable villain? Do I get an animal sidekick? All of these factor into a person's decision to purchase and play your game, and all of them should be apparent from your key art and videos. Pickpock's new game, Into the Dead, Our Darkest Days, went into early access with more than 500,000 wishlists on Steam, even though zombie games are an extremely saturated market. But we stood out because we combined unexpected elements. 2D side-scrolling, a 1970s, 80s setting, a Western environment, shelter management. People who are fans of zombie games, of zombies, love zombies. That's what entices them. So you can stand out by pairing unexpected gameplay with that zombie selling point. You might have inventive gameplay, but the easiest way to be inventive is to have unexpected pairings between gameplay and theme or setting. When beginning a game, give as much thought to the setting as you give to the gameplay. Are they in sync? Do they intentionally clash? Do you use gameplay to offer something that hasn't been seen in this setting? Do you offer a setting that hasn't been seen with this gameplay? When you start to think about your marketing as the promise that you're making to your future fans, it completely changes your perspective on what marketing is. It isn't about tricking or manipulating people. It's the top of your engagement funnel. For us, we actually mocked up a fake Steam storefront as a way to communicate our vision. The team put this together during their pre-production as a way of visualizing what they were making, as a way of understanding what would draw people in, what would get them excited, and what would get the developers, their team, excited too. Last time I talked about covers, I promise. So if you look at these for a second, these are all the same book. On TikTok, creators started to realize that the videos that got the most views were the ones with the prettiest covers. And TikTok, book talk is what it's called, is huge, by the way. It's like the biggest hashtag on TikTok. Publishers discovered that they could make more money by getting people to buy multiple copies of the same book. So they started releasing pretty special editions of things. They basically turned books into collectibles. Now, I'm not telling you to make pretty special editions of your games. That's not the point here. The point is that this happened because publishers focused their TikTok strategy, their engagement with TikTok, on what would sell the most books. When people start on TikTok, they almost always start with hopping on totally irrelevant trends because they're chasing views. Don't chase views, chase sales. What do you see here? No dancing. We're still experimental, but our goal isn't to just hop on totally irrelevant trends that are at odds with our audience. The thing about TikTok is that it blasts your content out to wildly varied audiences, people who don't follow you, so you can get incredible visibility, but the risk is that it just shows to a bunch of randoms. It's like if you turned on a UA campaign, but absolutely no parameters on it and just said, show it to humans. You need the video itself to strong-arm the algorithm into showing it to the right people. So be experimental, but stick to content that will speak to your audience. Speaking of TikTok, I want to wrap up today with talking about community management as part of your marketing strategy, because this is something that can bring out kind of polarized opinions when talking to games marketers. In books, the author's name is one of your biggest assets. Authors build themselves up as a brand, and new books leverage that brand. New books lead readers to explore the author's back catalog, and the fandom of the back catalog eagerly embraces and anticipates the new books. In games, marketing tends to be product-led. I've actually had a lot of people tell me, like, never market the studio, always market the game, always market the product. So for a long time, that's what Pickpock has always done. We launch our games rather than saying Pickpock has a new game coming out. We know that players think of our game first and foremost rather than our studio brand. But as UA gets more expensive, as marketing gets harder, all of those things that happen in a more mature market that I was talking about earlier, I think we're missing a trick if we don't leverage the communities that we already have. If you engage with your community, if you create fans, if you create lore and characters that they love, or create loyalty to your vision and your creativity, then you already have people you can talk to. They are already in your corner. Your publisher can't engage with fans in the authentic way that you can. Building a fan base means greater probability and predictability of success for future games. Build a portfolio of games that your fans will love and then lead them from one game to the next. And this is something that I think is worthwhile whether you self-publish or work with a publisher. Games are part of a wider entertainment ecosystem. Learning from books, TV, and film will help you discover new ideas, navigate risks, and better predict entertainment trends. Thank you. And big thank you to all these people and websites for the data I referenced. I'm happy to share these after if you're interested in learning more, and just reach out on LinkedIn. Cool. Thank you.
We have plenty of time for questions.
No. You might be able to go to afternoon tea early. Cool. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
One person over here.
If you were to have the choice to do it again, would you choose to self-publish and not find a publisher for your books?
No. So there's an easy reason for that, and that's because I write children's books. So children's books, the self-publishing market is really, really, really hard. And it's because librarians and teachers don't have time to vet your book. Like, self-publishing books, I mean, there are lots of really, really good self-published books. It's not necessarily about quality, but it's like they kind of, you're not necessarily going to have the kind of stamp of approval that you with self-publishing that you have with being with a traditional publisher that says, you know, this book has been vetted, it doesn't have any weird, creepy stuff in it. Like with books for children, they just have to be a lot more careful. And so teachers and especially teachers and librarians basically will not look at self-published children's books. Parents sometimes do, but it's very, very hard. So yeah, because I write children's books, self-publishing was completely off the table for me. But I am actually in the middle, I'm about 50,000 words into writing an adult book. And if I couldn't publish it with a publisher, I would very happily consider self-publishing it. So it really depends. Like certain genres do really well self-publishing. Like if you write romance, you are almost like it's very hard to make a compelling argument to publish romance with a traditional publisher. You can make so much more money self-publishing, so much more. So romance writers are just like churning out books, self-published books. Same with like that's the kind of the most popular genre, self-published, but thrillers, mysteries, genre fiction tends to do quite well self-published. If you're writing something that's more literary, maybe you want to go traditional because one of your marketing avenues there is to get awards, and awards are going to be less likely to consider you if you're self-published. So it's like you need to think through all these different things. And that's kind of the point I'm making about games too, is it's like you really just need to think about all these different angles, like what is the game you are envisioning and what is the best path to market. Like at Pickpock, we have some games that we released on mobile, some on PC, some on Apple Arcade, and it's because certain games we just knew were going to do better on certain platforms. Yeah.
So when it comes to like selling to an audience versus selling to a publisher, is it are you aiming to like show the same kind of things, like this is my setting, this is the gameplay, that kind of thing, or is it different depending on who you're trying to sell your game to?
Yeah, I mean, I think every publisher is going to have its own criteria that they're looking at. And so one of my number one recommendations is like, give them what they ask for. So like, if they are saying, we want to see this and this and this, you sometimes, this is going to sound a bit mean, but it's like you sometimes will hear people be like, oh, well, I can't do that because my game is too special. And it's like, well, they're reviewing like thousands of submissions, and not having the criteria that they've asked for becomes a very easy way for them to just throw your pitch out. It's the same with like CVs and things like that. Like, don't make it easy for people to just discard you by not giving them the information they ask for. So, but I think with a publisher, you are probably wanting to say, I believe that there are actually people, and not like 5 people, but like a sizable number of people who will be interested in this thing. And maybe that's because this genre is super popular, and also cowboys are super popular, and also it's unique on the market because there aren't really any games that combine those two things. Or like, how can you make a compelling argument that there are both a number of people who will be interested in this thing, and also that you are providing something that they can't get elsewhere? Because if you're just remaking something that already exists on the market, again, those stats about it being really hard to tear people away from games they already love, if you're not adding something new to the equation, they're just going to keep playing the game that they already love. There are those elements, but you're kind of needing to explain to a publisher the why behind why you've chosen those elements, versus a reader or a player. They don't really care why you've made it a cowboy game. They are just like, yeah, I love cowboys, yeah.
That might be a good one.
Excellent. Thank you.